When Tae is about to say something, all of a sudden, without letting Tae speak, he pulls Tae into a desperate kiss, which filled with fear that clawed at Jungkook's chest and squeezed his heart. His lips pressed against Tae's with urgency, molding against the younger man's in a plea for comfort, for reassurance, for anything that would tell him Tae hadn't given up on him. But Tae stood frozen. His eyes widened in shock as Jungkook's lips moved against his. He couldn't bring himself to respond, couldn't bring himself to hold Jungkook the way he normally would. His hands remained at his sides, hesitant and stiff, though his heart raced painfully against his ribcage. Realizing Tae wasn't holding him, Jungkook's panic spiked. Tears pricked his eyes as he grabbed Tae's hands and placed them firmly on his waist. His voice cracked in his head, a desperate scream that only he could hear. "Hold me. Please, just hold me." Yet even then, Tae's hands didn't tighten around him. They simply rested there, exactly where Jungkook had placed them, lifeless and unresponsive. A sob threatened to escape Jungkook's throat, but he choked it back, leaning in to kiss Tae more desperately. His lips moved with an almost frantic energy, growing more as the fear consumed him entirely. Was Tae disgusted by him now? Did he regret everything? Tae's breath hitched, his heart breaking at the sight and feel of Jungkook's vulnerability. But before he could process his thoughts, he felt Jungkook's frantic kisses becoming uneven, labored, his breathing faltering. That was enough to snap Tae out of his haze. "Jungkook, stop," Tae muttered, his voice low but firm. He broke the kiss with gentle but undeniable force, placing his hands on Jungkook's shoulders to steady him. Jungkook gasped for air, but his tear-filled eyes glared at Tae, his chest heaving as if he'd run miles. "No!" Jungkook cried, shaking his head as he tried to lean in again, but Tae held him firmly in place. "Don't pull away. Please, don't pull away." "Jungkook, I said stop," Tae said again, his voice a little bit louder this time, his grip tightening slightly on Jungkook's shoulders. "What are you doing? Are you out of your mind? Why are you being this desperate all of a sudden? This isn't you." Looking at Jungkook, Tae said, his voice filled with unspoken emotion. His eyes are red seeing Jungkook's vulnerable condition. I Jungkook stammered, his lips trembling as tears finally spilled over. His hands clutched Tae's jacket tightly, his entire body shaking. You don't want me anymore, do you? You don't even want to touch me. I thought you." "Stop," Tae interrupted, his tone laced with both frustration and concern. "Stop talking like that. Calm down and take a deep breath. Look at me." Jungkook shook his head again, refusing to meet Tae's gaze, but Tae tilted his chin up gently, forcing their eyes to lock. "Breathe," Tae said, his deep voice softening but still holding authority. "You're going to pass out if you don't calm down. I'm not going anywhere. I'm not pulling away from you. Stop thinking nonsense." "Then why?" Jungkook whispered, his voice breaking as he clung to Tae like his life depended on it. "Why don't you touch me? Why don't you kiss me back? Why are you just standing there?" Tae sighed, his heart aching at the sight of Jungkook's tear-streaked face. He cupped Jungkook's face with both hands, his thumbs gently wiping away the tears. Because I don't want the same thing to happen again, Tae admitted, his voice steady but filled with emotion. I don't want to go overboard. I don't want to scare you. I don't want to make you uncomfortable. Jungkook's lips parted as if to argue, but Tae continued, his eyes boring into Jungkook's with an intensity that silenced him. I want to be someone you feel safe with, Tae said firmly. Not someone who makes you feel like you have to beg for my touch or my attention. I need you to know that you mean everything to me, but I won't do anything that will make you question yourself or your worth. Do you understand me? Jungkook blinked up at him, his tears still falling silently, but something in Tae's words seemed to reach him. His breathing steadied slightly, and his grip on Tae's jacket loosened. You're not going to leave me? Jungkook asked in a broken whisper, his vulnerability laid visible. Never. Tae replied without hesitation, his hands still cradling Jungkook's face. But you need to trust me. Trust that I'll always be here for you. You don't need to force yourself trying to prove something that doesn't need proving. Jungkook nodded slowly, his lips trembling as he leaned into Tae's touch. The younger man pulled him into a gentle hug, his arms finally tightening around Jungkook's waist, offering the comfort and security that Jungkook had been so desperate for. For a while, they stood there in silence, Tae holding Jungkook as if to piece him back together. And in that embrace, Jungkook's sobs slowly quieted, his fears soothed by the warmth and strength of Tae's presence. Jungkook clung to him like a lifeline, breathing in Tae's calming scent as his trembling subsided. But however he couldn't ignore the ache in his chest, the unanswered questions that had been clawing at him ever since he saw Tae's wounded hand. Why? Jungkook began softly, his voice muffled against Tae's chest. He hesitated, biting his lip before pulling back slightly to look up at him. Why did you hurt yourself? Tae's expression faltered for the first time, a flicker of guilt passing through his sharp features. He didn't respond immediately, his gaze dropping to the floor as if the weight of his actions had suddenly become unbearable. You never scared me. Jungkook continued, his voice trembling but firm in its sincerity. You've never made me uncomfortable, Tae. I don't even know why I panicked that moment. Maybe it's because it's the first time I felt something this deep, this overwhelming. But that doesn't mean you can hurt yourself because of my stupidity. Tae's eyes snapped up to meet Jungkook's, wide with surprise at the older man's sudden assertiveness. I won't allow you to hurt yourself ever again, Jungkook said, his tone filled with quiet determination. He took Tae's hands in his own, cradling them as if they were something precious and fragile. His fingers brushed against the reddened cut marks on Tae's palm and knuckles, his heart twisted painfully. No matter what the reason is, Jungkook continued, his voice softer now but no less resolute. Promise me, Tae. Promise me you'll never hurt yourself again. Tae swallowed hard, his throat bobbing as he stared at the man in front of him. The vulnerability in Jungkook's gaze, the way his delicate fingers carefully held his hands as if even the slightest pressure might cause him pain, it was enough to shatter whatever walls Tae had built around himself. I promise. I'll never hurt myself again. I swear, Tae said, his voice low but steady. Jungkook exhaled shakily, relief washing over him like a wave. But as his eyes returned to Tae's injured hand, a fresh wave of concern overtook him. He gently turned Tae's palm over, examining the bruises and cuts with a furrowed brow. "Why did you do this to yourself in the first place?" Jungkook asked, his voice tinged with both sadness and frustration. Tears are flickering in his big eyes, as if they are about to fall. He carefully traced the edges of a particularly deep cut, his touch light. "Look at it, it looks so painful. It must hurt so much, and you didn't even apply any medicine on it. Why don't you take care of yourself?" Jungkook said, his voice breaking slightly as he met Tae's gaze. "It doesn't matter. It's just a scratch. I'll be fine," Tae replied quietly, his eyes softening as he watched tears flickering in Jungkook's big eyes. "It does matter." Jungkook shot back, his sudden firmness surprising both of them. "How could you just ignore it like this? Do you have any idea how much it hurt me to see you like this? You can't just ignore it. What if it gets infected? What if?" "Okay, fine. I'll take care of it. Calm down. I didn't mean to worry you," Tae interrupted gently, placing his hand over Jungkook's to calm him down. "You think saying that will make it okay? You hurt yourself because of me, Tae? How am I supposed to be okay with that? You don't deserve this. You don't deserve to feel pain like this, especially not because of me. I can't accept that," Jungkook whispered, his voice breaking slightly as tears began to roll down his cheeks. Tae's jaw tightened, guilt weighing heavily on his chest. He hadn't thought much about it at the time. He'd been too consumed by his own turmoil to care about the pain. But seeing the way Jungkook was looking at him now, as if he couldn't bear the thought of Tae's suffering, made him feel the weight of his actions all over again. He stepped closer, leaning his forehead against Jungkook's as his hands cupped the older man's face. "I'm sorry," Tae murmured, his voice filled with regret. "I was angry at myself, not you. I didn't know how to handle it. But I'll never let it happen again, I promise you that. Please don't cry. It's breaking my heart," Tae said and wiped Jungkook's tears away. Jungkook nodded slowly, as he clung to Tae's jacket. He carefully brought Tae's injured hand to his lips, pressing a light kiss against the bruised skin as if he could ease the pain himself. "Let me take care of it, please," Jungkook whispered, his voice trembling. Tae tilted his head, his sharp gaze studying Jungkook as the latter carefully pressed a kiss to the cuts on his palm. He could see how much guilt lingered in Jungkook's expression, and it made his chest tighten. "You really don't have to do this. I'll take care of it myself. You already missed one of your lectures for me. You're a professor here. It's not good for your reputation. You should go back to your work now," Tae said softly, his voice measured but warm. Jungkook froze for a moment, his lips still hovering near Tae's hand. He glanced up sharply, his brows furrowing. "Reputation? You think I care about that right now? Tae, your well-being matters more to me than any lecture or reputation. I have no other classes today anyway. Come with me, I'll treat your hand myself," Jungkook echoed, his tone firm yet tinged with hurt. Tae sighed, reluctant but unable to resist the determined look in Jungkook's big, teary eyes. Listen, you really? No. Let me take care of you, Tae. Please. Jungkook cut him off, his tone leaving no room for argument. Tae could only nod, his resistance crumbling in the face of Jungkook's insistence. As they exited the college building, Jungkook turned to Tae and stretched out his hand. Your car keys. Jungkook said simply. Tae blinked, surprised by the request. You want to drive? Jungkook gave a small nod. Yeah. Just hand them over, Tae. Though puzzled, Tae reached into his pocket and handed Jungkook the keys. Don't scratch my car. Tae teased lightly, trying to break the tension. Jungkook rolled his eyes but smiled faintly. Just get in, Jungkook said, opening the driver's door and settling behind the wheel. Tae climbed into the passenger seat without further protest, and the ride began in comfortable silence. But when Jungkook pulled into a familiar apartment complex that wasn't Tae's, the younger man raised a brow. And says, to be continued.